In a quiet little town surrounded by green hills and open fields, there lived a young girl who had a heart full of dreams but also carried a heavy burden. She was just 12 years old, with bright eyes that still sparkled despite everything she had been through. Life hadn't been kind to her in recent years. At the age of 10, she was diagnosed with leukemia, a word no child should ever have to hear. It changed her world overnight. Hospitals became her second home, doctors her constant companions, and needles her unwelcome friends. But even in the darkest moments, something inside her refused to give up. Her love for art became her lifeline. When she wasn't sitting in a hospital bed or attending school, she would sit by her bedroom window with a sketchbook in hand. The view outside inspired her. Rolling hills, trees swaying in the wind, birds flying freely across the sky. She poured all her feelings onto paper, creating vivid landscapes and whimsical animals that seemed almost alive. Each stroke of color helped her escape from the pain, if only for a while. For her, painting wasn't just a hobby. It was how she spoke when words failed her. One day, as spring began to bloom and flowers started peeking out of the ground, an idea struck her. Her family had been struggling financially because of her medical bills, and though they never complained, she could see the worry etched on their faces. She wanted to help. She wanted to do something. So she came up with a plan. What if she sold her artwork? Maybe people would buy her paintings and the money could go toward her treatment. It felt like a small step, but it gave her hope, a reason to believe she could make things better. The next morning, armed with determination and a stack of her best paintings, she set up a tiny stall near the local farmer's market. It wasn't much, just a wooden table draped with a colorful cloth, but it held treasures beyond measure. On display were her creations: a golden sunset over a calm lake, a playful puppy chasing butterflies, and a majestic eagle soaring high above mountains. Each piece told a story, capturing emotions so raw and pure that anyone who looked at them couldn't help but feel moved. Beside the painting sat a handwritten sign that read, "Art for Life, help me fight cancer." At first, passers-by didn't notice the stall tucked away in the corner, but soon curiosity got the better of them. People stopped to admire the vibrant colors and intricate details of her work. They asked questions. How old was she? Did she really paint these herself, and why was she selling them? Why was she selling? Her answers were simple yet powerful. Yes, she painted every single one. Yes, she was doing this to raise money for her chemotherapy treatments. Their reactions ranged from awe to admiration, and many left with smiles on their faces and a painting in their hands. Word spread quickly around the market. By midday, a small crowd had gathered around her stall. Some bought paintings as gifts for loved ones, others simply to support her cause. Every sale filled her with gratitude, not just because of the money, but because strangers cared enough to help. One elderly woman hugged her tightly after buying a painting of two children playing under a tree. "This reminds me of my grandchildren," the woman said, tears glistening in her eyes. Another man, a farmer with dirt-streaked hands, chose a painting of a horse galloping through a field. "This is beautiful," he said gruffly. "You've got real talent, kiddo." As the hours passed, the pile of paintings on her table grew smaller, replaced by crumpled bills and coins in a jar. Though she was tired from standing and talking to customers all day, her heart soared. She realized that her art wasn't just about raising funds. It was connecting her to people in ways she never expected. Each interaction reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight. There were good people out there willing to lend a hand, share a smile, or offer a kind word. Little did she know, however, that the most unexpected moment of her day was yet to come. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the bustling market, a tall figure approached her stall. He wore sunglasses and carried himself with an air of quiet confidence. At first glance, he looked like any other visitor browsing the stalls. But then someone gasped, pointing excitedly. Others turned to look, their jaws dropping in disbelief. The man standing before her was none other than Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor, director, and icon known worldwide. How had he ended up here, in this small town, at her humble stall? For a moment, silence fell over the crowd. Everyone watched, holding their breath, as Clint picked up one of her paintings. It was a breathtaking depiction of a lone wolf standing atop a snow-covered mountain, staring at a star-filled sky. His expression softened as he studied it closely, nodding slowly. Then, turning to the young artist, he spoke in his unmistakable, gravelly voice. "This is incredible," he said. "You've got real talent, kid." Her cheeks flushed red, unsure of what to say. Before she could respond, Clint reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Without hesitation, he handed her a check, not for $50, not for $100, but for $10,000. The crowd erupted into applause, some cheering, others wiping away tears. "Consider this my contribution to your fight," Clint told her firmly, "and keep doing what you're doing." It was a moment she would never forget. A stranger stepping in to change her life in an instant. But more than the money, it was the validation she received that meant the most. Someone famous, someone successful, believed in her. That belief fueled her spirit, giving her the courage to keep fighting, keep painting, and keep dreaming. The moment Clint Eastwood handed her the check, time seemed to stand still. The young girl stared at the piece of paper in disbelief, her hands trembling slightly as she held it. $10,000. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life, let alone imagined earning from selling her paintings. Her heart raced, and for a second she forgot how to speak. All she could do was look up at Clint, her wide eyes filled with gratitude and wonder. Clint, noticing her stunned silence, gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You're stronger than you think, kid," he said, his voice steady but kind. "Don't ever stop believing in yourself." Those words lingered in the air, wrapping around her like a warm blanket on a cold night. They weren't just about the art or the cancer fight. They felt like a message meant for her soul. She nodded slowly, finding her voice enough to whisper a shaky, "Thank you." By now, the crowd around her stall had grown even larger. People were snapping photos, recording videos, and whispering excitedly to one another. Some clapped while others wiped away tears. A few kids in the crowd tugged at their parents' sleeves, asking who the man was and why everyone seemed so amazed. News of what had happened spread like wildfire, not just through the market but across social media too. Within hours, pictures of the young artist and Clint Eastwood standing together went viral. Hashtags like Trigger Art for Life and Believe In her started trending online, drawing attention from people far beyond the small town. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting everything in hues of orange and pink, the young girl began packing up her stall. Her jar of coins jingled happily, and her stack of unsold paintings had dwindled significantly. But it wasn't just the money that made her feel lighter. It was the overwhelming sense of connection she'd experienced that day. Strangers had become supporters, cheering her on and reminding her that she wasn't alone. And then there was Clint, whose unexpected generosity had turned an ordinary afternoon into something extraordinary. That evening, as she sat at the kitchen table with her parents, recounting every detail of the encounter, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. Her mom hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face while her dad shook his head in amazement. "I don't know how we got so lucky," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But this is going to change things for us, for you." The next morning, when she woke up, she found her phone buzzing nonstop with notifications. Friends, family members, and even strangers were reaching out to congratulate her. Local news stations called wanting interviews, and artists from nearby towns sent messages offering advice and encouragement. One woman, a professional painter herself, reached out to say she'd love to mentor her and teach her new techniques. Another man who owned an art supply store promised to donate materials so she wouldn't have to worry about buying paints and canvases anymore. It wasn't just individuals stepping up. Local businesses wanted to help too. A cafe owner offered to host a weekend art exhibit featuring her work, donating all proceeds to her medical fund. A bookstore agreed to display her paintings in their front window, attracting curious customers who wanted to see the artwork that had caught Clint Eastwood's eye. Even the mayor of the town stopped by her house to personally thank her for inspiring the community. "You've reminded us all of what really matters," he told her. "Courage, creativity, and kindness." Despite all the attention, the young girl stayed grounded. She didn't let the sudden fame go to her head. Instead, she focused on what mattered most, continuing to create art and spreading hope to others facing challenges similar to hers. She spent her days painting whenever she had free time, often working late into the night. Her bedroom walls were covered in sketches and half-finished pieces, each one telling a story of resilience and joy. Sometimes she painted scenes from her own life: the hospital room where she received treatment, the tree outside her window where birds nested, the faces of her family members smiling back at her. Other times, she let her imagination run wild, creating fantastical worlds full of color and adventure. As weeks turned into months, her story continued to inspire people far and wide. Families dealing with illnesses reached out to share how her courage had given them strength. Teachers used her journey as an example in classrooms, encouraging students to find ways to make a difference no matter their circumstances. Artists posted tributes to her online, praising not only her talent but also her determination to use her gift for good. Every message she received fueled her passion even further, pushing her to dream bigger and work harder. One day, during a routine visit to the hospital for her chemotherapy treatment, she noticed something different. A group of volunteers had set up a small art station in the waiting area, complete with paper, crayons, and markers. Children waiting for appointments sat hunched over their creations, their faces lighting up as they added colors and shapes to blank pages. When she asked one of the nurses about it, she learned that the idea had been inspired by her story. "We thought, if art can bring so much joy to you, maybe it can help these kids too," the nurse explained with a smile. Seeing those children laugh and create brought tears to her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she realized the ripple effect of her actions. What started as a simple effort to raise money for her treatments had grown into something much larger, a movement that touched lives and brought communities together. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone who found hope and inspiration in her journey. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood kept in touch, sending occasional notes of encouragement and updates about her progress to his fans. Though he lived miles away, his support remained constant. In one letter, he wrote, "Life throws curveballs, but it's how we swing that defines us. Keep swinging, kid." Those words stuck with her, becoming a mantra she repeated to herself whenever doubt crept in. As the seasons changed and winter approached, she prepared for her first official art exhibition at the local cafe. Nervous yet excited, she carefully selected her best pieces to display. Each painting represented a chapter of her life, her struggles, her triumphs, her dreams. On opening night, the cafe was packed with people eager to meet the young artist whose story had captured hearts worldwide. As she stood beside her work, answering questions and sharing her experiences, she felt a deep sense of pride, not because of the praise she received, but because she knew she was making a difference. Her journey was far from over. There would be tough days ahead, moments when the weight of her illness threatened to pull her under. But she faced them with the same spirit that had carried her this far, a belief in the power of art, the kindness of strangers, and the strength within herself. Little did she know the best chapters of her story were yet to be written, and they would prove that no obstacle was too great when met with courage, creativity, and an unwavering will to keep moving forward. The art exhibition at the cafe turned out to be more than just a showcase of paintings. It became a celebration of hope, resilience, and community. The walls were lined with her vibrant creations, each piece telling its own story. Some depicted serene landscapes that seemed to breathe life into the room, while others featured whimsical animals and imaginary worlds that sparked smiles and laughter. Visitors moved slowly from one painting to the next, their eyes wide with admiration. Many paused to take photos or jot down notes about their favorite pieces, promising themselves they'd return later to buy something special. What struck everyone most was how personal the artwork felt. Each brushstroke carried emotion, joy, pain, determination, and even moments of doubt. One painting in particular stood out. It showed a tree with roots stretching deep into the earth, its branches reaching high toward the sky. In the corner, barely noticeable unless you looked closely, was a small bird perched on one of the branches. When asked about it, the young artist explained softly, "That's me. No matter how hard things get, I want to keep growing, and maybe someday I'll fly." Her words resonated deeply with those who heard them. Parents held their children closer, whispering stories of bravery and perseverance. Older folks nodded knowingly, remembering battles they'd fought in their own lives. Even teenagers, usually glued to their phones, put them away for a moment to soak in the atmosphere. For a few hours, the cafe transformed into a space where people connected, not through technology or trends, but through shared emotions and experiences. As the evening wore on, the young artist found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Some came bearing gifts, boxes of paints, sketchbooks, and brushes donated by local artists and businesses. Others simply wanted to shake her hand or give her a hug. One elderly man, his hands trembling as he held a cane, handed her a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," he said, his voice soft but firm. Inside was a handwritten note. "Your courage reminds me of my granddaughter. She didn't make it, but seeing you gives me peace. Thank you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she hugged him tightly, unable to find the right words to respond. By the end of the night, nearly every painting had been sold. The money raised would go directly toward her medical expenses, easing some of the financial strain on her family. But beyond the monetary value, the event left an indelible mark on everyone involved. People left not just with artwork, but with a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that kindness and creativity could light up even the darkest corners of life. Weeks passed, and the buzz around her story continued to grow. Local newspapers wrote articles about her journey, highlighting not only her artistic talent but also her unwavering spirit. Social media played a big role too, with hashtags like #DarkArtHeals and "Believe in Her" trending for days. Artists from across the country reached out offering mentorship and advice. One professional painter sent her a detailed guide on mixing colors and creating texture, while another invited her to visit his studio for a private lesson. Though many of these opportunities excited her, she remained humble, always quick to thank anyone who offered help. Her newfound fame brought challenges as well. Strangers sometimes stopped her in public, asking for autographs or selfies. While flattering, it made her feel uncomfortable at times. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight and worried that people saw her as someone extraordinary when, in truth, she felt like any other kid trying to navigate life. Her parents noticed this shift and reminded her often that her worth wasn't tied to what others thought of her. "You're amazing because of who you are, not because of what you've done," her mom told her one evening. "Never forget that." Despite the occasional discomfort, she embraced the opportunities that came her way. When a local school invited her to speak to students about her experience, she accepted without hesitation. Standing in front of a classroom, full of curious faces, she spoke honestly about her diagnosis, her love for art, and the importance of finding joy even in tough times. At the end of her talk, a little boy raised his hand timidly. "Are you scared?" he asked. She thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes. But I think being brave means doing things even when you're scared. And I have so much to look forward to." Her words stuck with the students long after she left. Teachers reported that attendance improved the following week, as kids who rarely showed up didn't want to miss the chance to share their own drawings inspired by her visit. Art, once considered a fun extra subject, suddenly gained new significance. Students began using it as a way to express themselves, turning blank pages into colorful reflections of their inner worlds. Meanwhile, her health remained a constant concern. Chemotherapy sessions left her exhausted, and there were days when getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. Yet she refused to let the illness define her. On good days, she painted tirelessly, losing track of time as she lost herself in her work. On bad days, she rested, leaning on her family and friends for support. Her dad often joked that her bedroom looked like an artist's studio, with paintbrushes scattered everywhere and canvases propped against every available surface. "One day, we'll need to build you your own gallery," he teased, though they both knew he meant it. Her relationship with Clint Eastwood also evolved over time. Though they lived far apart, they exchanged letters regularly. His messages were always brief but meaningful, filled with wisdom gleaned from decades of navigating life's ups and downs. In one letter he wrote, "Life isn't fair, but it's what you do with the cards you're dealt that counts. Keep playing your hand, kid, you're winning." Those words stayed with her, serving as a source of strength during difficult moments. Inspired by his generosity, she decided to pay it forward. Using part of the money from her art sales, she started a small fund to help other families dealing with medical expenses. It wasn't much at first, just enough to cover a few prescriptions or transportation costs, but it grew steadily as donations poured in. Local businesses contributed supplies, and volunteers organized fundraisers to keep the effort going. Before long, the fund became a lifeline for dozens of families in the community, offering not just financial assistance but also a sense of solidarity. One chilly winter morning, as snow blanketed the town, she received an email that took her breath away. A prestigious art gallery in the city had seen her work online and wanted to feature her in an upcoming exhibition alongside established artists. The invitation included a formal letter signed by the gallery director, praising her unique perspective and undeniable talent. For a moment, she sat frozen, staring at the screen. Was this real? Could someone like her, still so young and inexperienced, truly stand alongside professionals? Her parents hugged her tightly when she showed them the news. "This is huge," her dad exclaimed, practically jumping up and down with excitement. Her mom, however, noticed the flicker of doubt in her eyes. "You deserve this," she said firmly. "Don't let fear hold you back. You've already proven you can handle anything life throws at you." With their encouragement, she accepted the invitation. Preparing for the exhibition became her primary focus in the weeks that followed. She worked tirelessly, experimenting with new techniques and pushing herself to create pieces that reflected her growth as an artist. Some nights, she stayed up late, reworking a painting until it felt just right. Other times, she sought feedback from mentors and peers, eager to learn and improve. When the day of the exhibition finally arrived, nerves threatened to overwhelm her. Dressed in her best outfit, she walked into the grand gallery, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was packed with people, artists, critics, collectors, and curious visitors, all gathered to see the young girl whose story had captured hearts worldwide. As she stood beside her paintings, answering questions and sharing her journey, she realized something profound. This wasn't just about her anymore. Her art had become a bridge, connecting people from all walks of life and reminding them of the beauty that exists even in struggle. By the end of the night, several of her pieces had been purchased and countless visitors praised her work. But the highlight came when a woman approached her, tears streaming down her face. "My son has cancer too," she said, clutching one of the paintings she'd just bought. "Your story gives us hope. Thank you for showing us that it's possible to dream, even when life feels impossible." Those words stayed with her long after the exhibition ended. They reminded her why she started painting in the first place, not for fame or fortune, but to bring light into the lives of others. And as she stepped outside into the crisp winter air, she knew this was only the beginning. There were still mountains to climb, skies to explore, and dreams waiting to take flight. The success of the City Gallery exhibition opened doors that the young artist had never imagined possible. Her paintings, once displayed on a humble wooden table at the farmer's market, now hung in elegant frames on the walls of one of the most prestigious art spaces in the region. The contrast between where she started and where she stood now was staggering, but it didn't make her forget her roots. If anything, it deepened her gratitude for every step of the journey. The struggles, the kindness of strangers, and the unwavering support of her family. After the exhibition, life seemed to move faster than ever before. Requests for interviews poured in from newspapers, radio shows, and even television programs. People wanted to hear her story, not just about her art, but about how she turned adversity into opportunity. At first, she felt overwhelmed by all the attention. Sitting under bright studio lights, answering questions while cameras rolled, wasn't something she'd ever envisioned for herself. But as she spoke, she realized that sharing her experiences might inspire others who were facing their own battles. So she leaned into it, speaking honestly about her fears, her dreams, and the moments when she doubted she could keep going. One interviewer asked her a question that stuck with her long after the cameras stopped rolling. "What keeps you motivated when things get tough?" She paused, thinking carefully before responding. "I think about my family," she said finally. "They've sacrificed so much for me, and I don't want to let them down. And then I think about all the people who've supported me, people I don't even know. Their kindness reminds me that I'm not alone. That gives me strength." Her words resonated deeply with viewers. Clips from the interview were shared widely online, with many commenting on how her sincerity and optimism touched their hearts. Some shared their own stories of hardship, thanking her for giving them hope. Others pledged donations to her medical fund or volunteered to help organize events in her honor. It was clear that her impact extended far beyond the canvas. She had become a symbol of resilience for countless individuals. As her reputation grew, opportunities began to multiply. Art galleries from other cities invited her to showcase her work, and schools requested her presence for workshops and motivational talks. Traveling became a regular part of her routine, though it wasn't always easy given her health condition. Long car rides and late nights took a toll on her body, but she refused to let fatigue stand in her way. Each new experience fueled her passion, reminding her why she started painting in the first place: to connect with people and spread positivity. During one such trip, she visited a children's hospital to host an art workshop for kids undergoing treatment. Walking through the halls, she felt a lump form in her throat, the sterile smell of antiseptic, the beeping of machines, the sight of tiny faces attached to IV poles. It all brought back memories she tried hard to push aside. But instead of letting sadness overwhelm her, she focused on the task at hand, bringing smiles to these children's faces. She set up a makeshift art station in the hospital's activity room, filling tables with colorful paper, markers, and paints. As the kids trickled in, some shyly holding onto their parents' hands, others wheeling themselves in with IV poles trailing behind, she greeted each one warmly. "Today, we're going to create our own magical worlds," she told them, holding up a blank sheet of paper. "You can paint whatever makes you happy, a place you'd love to visit, your favorite animal, or even something completely made up." At first, the children hesitated, unsure of what to draw. But as she moved from table to table, offering encouragement and helping them mix colors, their creativity began to flow. One boy painted a rocket ship soaring through space, explaining that he wanted to explore planets far away. A little girl drew a beach with turquoise waves and golden sand, saying it reminded her of vacations with her grandparents. Another child created a whimsical creature with wings and stripes, declaring it his superhero pet. Watching them laugh and share their ideas filled her with a sense of purpose she couldn't put into words. When the workshop ended, several parents approached her, tears in their eyes. "Thank you," one mother said, clutching her son's painting. "He hasn't smiled like this in weeks. You've given him something to look forward to." These moments reinforced her belief in the healing power of art. It wasn't just about creating beautiful pictures. It was about providing an escape, a way to channel emotions, and a reminder that joy could still exist amidst pain. Back home, her family noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. While she remained as determined as ever, there was a new lightness to her spirit. She laughed more often, joked around with her siblings, and spent hours brainstorming ideas for future projects. Her bedroom, once cluttered with half-finished paintings and scattered supplies, now resembled a mini art studio, complete with an easel, shelves of neatly organized paints, and sketches pinned to the walls. Her dad often teased her about turning the house into a gallery, but his pride was evident in the way he proudly showed off her work to anyone who visited. Her mom, however, kept a watchful eye on her health. Chemotherapy continued to take its toll, leaving her weak and fatigued on many days. There were mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible, and evenings when nausea made it hard to eat. Yet, she rarely complained, knowing that every treatment brought her closer to recovery. Her parents did their best to shield her from worry, but she could see the strain in their eyes, the sleepless nights, the whispered conversations about bills and appointments. It made her even more determined to use her art to ease their burden. One day, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, she stumbled upon a stack of photographs from her childhood. Flipping through them, she found pictures of family vacations, birthday parties, and lazy summer afternoons spent playing outside. Each image captured a moment of pure happiness, untainted by illness or fear. Inspired, she decided to create a series of paintings based on those memories, a visual diary of the life she cherished before cancer entered the picture. The project consumed her for weeks. She worked tirelessly, pouring her heart into each piece. One painting depicted a picnic in the park, with her family gathered around a checkered blanket, laughing as they shared slices of watermelon. Another showed her riding a bicycle down a tree-lined street, the wind rushing past her face. A third captured the glow of Christmas lights reflected in her siblings' wide-eyed expressions as they opened presents. When the series was complete, she titled it, "Moments of Light," a tribute to the joy that still existed even in the darkest times. Word of the new series quickly spread, drawing interest from collectors and galleries alike. An art dealer from a nearby city reached out, offering to represent her professionally. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she was ready for such a big step. Managing contracts, pricing artwork, and navigating the business side of art felt daunting, especially given her age and limited experience. But after discussing it with her parents and mentors, she decided to give it a try. The dealer promised to handle the logistics, allowing her to focus solely on creating. Under the dealer's guidance, her career took off in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her paintings began appearing in high-profile exhibitions, alongside works by renowned artists. Collectors clamored to purchase her pieces, citing their emotional depth and unique perspective. Critics praised her ability to convey complex emotions through bold colors and intricate details. Despite the growing recognition, she stayed grounded, always remembering why she started painting in the first place. One evening, as she sat sketching ideas for her next project, she received a phone call that left her speechless. It was Clint Eastwood. He had seen photos of her latest exhibition online and wanted to congratulate her personally. "You're doing incredible work, kid," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "Keep pushing boundaries. The world needs more people like you." Hanging up the phone, she felt a surge of gratitude, not just for his continued support, but for the reminder that kindness could spark extraordinary change. From a chance encounter at a farmer's market to standing on the brink of a promising career, her journey had been shaped by the generosity of others. And as she looked toward the future, she knew one thing for certain. No matter where life took her, she would always use her art to uplift, inspire, and bring people together. The phone call from Clint Eastwood stayed with her for days, replaying in her mind like a cherished memory. His words, simple yet profound, reminded her of the ripple effect kindness could create. A single act of generosity, no matter how small, had the power to change lives. She thought about how his unexpected support at the farmer's market had set off a chain reaction, inspiring not just her but countless others. It made her wonder, what if she could do the same? What if her art could be more than a source of income or inspiration? It could become a catalyst for change. With that thought planted firmly in her mind, she began brainstorming ways to use her growing platform for something bigger. The idea came to her one evening as she sat sketching by her bedroom window. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Families strolled along the sidewalk. Kids chased each other through the park, and an elderly couple walked hand in hand, their laughter carrying softly on the breeze. Watching them, she felt a pang of longing, not for herself but for all the people who couldn't enjoy such moments because they were trapped in hospital rooms, battling illnesses far beyond their control. That night, she jotted down notes for a project she tentatively called Art for All. The concept was simple yet ambitious. She would partner with hospitals, schools, and community centers to bring art supplies and workshops to children facing health challenges. These weren't just activities, they were lifelines, opportunities, for kids to express themselves, escape their worries, and rediscover the joy of creation. And it wouldn't stop there. She envisioned expanding the initiative to include adults too, offering art therapy programs for patients recovering from surgeries, dealing with chronic pain, or navigating mental health struggles. Excited by the idea, she shared it with her parents over breakfast the next morning. At first, they listened quietly, exchanging glances as she outlined her vision. When she finished, her dad leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "It's a big dream," he said finally. "But if anyone can pull it off, it's you." Her mom nodded in agreement, adding, "We'll help however we can." Encouraged by their support, she reached out to local organizations to gauge interest. To her delight, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Hospital administrators praised the initiative, saying it aligned perfectly with their efforts to provide holistic care for patients. Teachers expressed enthusiasm about incorporating art into their curriculum, especially for students struggling emotionally or academically. Even businesses offered to donate supplies, recognizing the value of investing in something that brought so much good to the community. Within weeks, Art for All went from a notebook doodle to a fully fledged program. Volunteers signed up to assist with workshops. Artists donated pieces for fundraising auctions, and social media campaigns helped spread the word. On the day of the first workshop, held in the activity room of a nearby children's hospital, nerves fluttered in her stomach. Would the kids enjoy it? Would they understand the message she hoped to convey, that art wasn't just about talent, but about connection and healing? Her fears melted away the moment she walked in. The room buzzed with energy as kids gathered around tables stocked with colorful paints, markers, and paper. Some eagerly grabbed brushes and began dabbing colors onto canvases, while others hesitated, unsure where to start. She moved from table to table, offering guidance and encouragement. "There's no right or wrong way to do this," she told them with a warm smile. "Just let your imagination take over." By the end of the session, every child had created something unique, a vibrant self-portrait, a fantastical creature, or a dreamlike landscape. As they proudly displayed their work, she noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The usual tension and sadness that lingered in hospital halls seemed lighter, replaced by laughter and chatter. Parents hugged their children tightly, thanking her for giving them a moment of normalcy. One mom whispered, "For a few hours, my daughter forgot she was sick." That means everything. Word of the successful workshop spread quickly, drawing attention from communities outside her hometown. Invitations poured in from schools, rehabilitation centers, and even senior living facilities eager to host similar events. Each new location presented its own challenges, from coordinating logistics to adapting activities for different age groups, but she tackled them head-on, fueled by the knowledge that her efforts were making a difference. One particularly memorable event took place at a veterans center. Many of the participants were older men and women who had served in wars decades ago, now grappling with physical injuries or PTSD. At first, they seemed reluctant to join in, wary of picking up paintbrushes they hadn't touched since childhood. But as she guided them through the process, encouraging them to channel their emotions onto canvas, something remarkable happened. Walls came down, stories emerged, and tears flowed freely. By the end of the session, the room was filled with powerful imagery, scenes of battlefields juxtaposed with peaceful landscapes, portraits of fallen comrades alongside depictions of hope and renewal. One veteran approached her after the workshop, clutching a painting of a sunrise breaking through storm clouds. His hands trembled slightly as he held it out. "This is me," he said gruffly, his voice thick with emotion. "Before and after. Thank you for helping me see that I'm still here." Moments like these reminded her why she had started Art for All in the first place. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about creating spaces where people could heal, connect, and find beauty in the midst of hardship. Art became a universal language, bridging gaps between generations, backgrounds, and experiences. As the program gained momentum, she found herself balancing multiple roles: artist, advocate, organizer, and mentor. It was exhausting at times, leaving her drained after long days of chemotherapy treatments and late-night planning sessions. Yet she refused to slow down. Every time someone thanked her for bringing art into their life, she felt a surge of energy that pushed her forward. Her family marveled at her resilience, often joking that she had superhuman strength. But they also worried about her taking on too much, reminding her to prioritize her health. Her doctor, noticing the toll her busy schedule was taking, suggested scaling back temporarily. "Your body needs rest," he explained gently during a routine checkup. "You're doing incredible work, but you have to take care of yourself too." Reluctantly, she agreed to cut back on travel and delegate some responsibilities to volunteers. Though it pained her to step back, she knew it was necessary, not just for her recovery, but to ensure she could continue helping others in the long run. During this quieter period, she turned her focus inward, reflecting on her journey so far. Sitting in her room surrounded by half-finished paintings, she thought about how far she'd come since setting up that little stall at the farmer's market. Back then, her goal had been simple: raise money for treatment. Now, her art had become a beacon of hope for thousands of people worldwide. She realized that success wasn't measured by accolades or financial gain. It was about the lives she touched and the positivity she spread. Inspired by this realization, she decided to document her experiences in a book. Writing had never been her strong suit, but she figured if she could paint with colors, she could surely paint with words. Over the course of several months, she poured her heart into the project, recounting her diagnosis, her love for art, and the unexpected twists her life had taken. She included anecdotes from workshops, letters from supporters, and reflections on the lessons she'd learned along the way. When the manuscript was complete, she titled it "Brush Strokes of Hope," a nod to the transformative power of creativity. Publishers immediately showed interest, praising the authenticity and emotional depth of her story. Within months, the book hit shelves, earning rave reviews from readers and critics alike. Many described it as both heartbreaking and uplifting, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Bookstores hosted signing events where fans lined up for hours to meet the young author whose courage had inspired them. Teachers incorporated excerpts into lesson plans, using her story to teach students about perseverance and empathy. Despite the whirlwind of success, she remained grounded, always keeping her focus on the people who mattered most, the ones whose lives her work impacted. Whether it was a kid learning to paint for the first time, a veteran finding solace in art, or a stranger moved to tears by her story, she saw herself in them. They reminded her that no matter how tough things got, there was always light to be found, and sometimes it came in the form of a brushstroke, a kind word, or a shared moment of connection. Looking ahead, she dreamed of expanding art for all, globally, reaching communities in need across continents. She imagined collaborating with international artists, hosting virtual workshops, and creating a network of support for anyone seeking refuge in creativity. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she had learned to embrace uncertainty, to trust that every challenge carried the seed of opportunity. And so, with paint-stained fingers and a heart full of dreams, she continued moving forward, one brushstroke at a time. For her, art wasn't just a hobby or a career, it was a calling, a way to remind the world that even in the darkest moments, beauty could bloom. As her book, Brushstrokes of Hope, climbed bestseller lists and her art continued to inspire people around the world, she found herself at a crossroads. Her life had transformed in ways she never imagined, but with that transformation came new challenges. Balancing her health, her passion for art, and her growing responsibilities was no easy feat. Yet every time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of one thing. This journey wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who looked to her as a source of strength and hope. One crisp autumn morning, she received an email that would change everything once again. It was from a foundation dedicated to supporting young artists facing adversity. They wanted to honor her with an award at their annual gala, an event attended by celebrities, philanthropists, and influencers. The invitation included details about a keynote speech she'd be asked to deliver, along with photos of past honorees who had gone on to achieve incredible things. At first glance, it seemed like another milestone in her already remarkable journey. But deep down, she felt a flicker of apprehension. Public speaking had always been daunting, and addressing such a high-profile audience felt like stepping onto uncharted territory. Her parents noticed her hesitation and sat her down one evening to talk it through. "You don't have to say yes if you're not ready," her mom said gently. "But think about what this could mean. Not just for you, but for the message you want to share." Her dad chimed in. "Sometimes the hardest things we do end up being the most rewarding." After much thought, she decided to accept the invitation. If there was ever a platform to amplify her mission, this was it. She spent weeks preparing for the speech, pouring her heart into every word. She didn't want it to sound rehearsed or polished. She wanted it to feel real, like a conversation with someone sitting across the table. She wrote about her diagnosis, the fear of losing control over her own life, and the moment she realized art could be her anchor. She talked about the strangers who became supporters, the kids whose laughter filled hospital rooms during workshops, and the veterans who found peace in painting stormy skies. And she ended with a call to action, a plea for everyone to use their talents, big or small, to make the world a little brighter. On the night of the gala, nerves threatened to overwhelm her as she stood backstage, listening to the hum of voices and clinking glasses. Dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit, she gripped the edges of her notes tightly, trying to steady her breathing. When her name was announced and she walked onto the stage, the room erupted into applause. Spotlights illuminated her path, but it was the sea of smiling faces that gave her courage. As she began speaking, her voice trembled at first, but soon grew stronger. By the time she reached the final lines of her speech, tears glistened in the eyes of many in the audience, including her own. The impact of that night rippled far beyond the ballroom. Clips of her speech went viral, shared by celebrities and everyday people alike. Messages poured in from all corners of the globe, thanking her for putting words to emotions they couldn't articulate. Some were battling illnesses, others were caregivers, and still others were simply individuals searching for purpose. Her story resonated with them because it wasn't just hers. It belonged to anyone who had faced hardship and refused to give up. Inspired by the overwhelming response, she decided to take her advocacy global. With the help of the foundation that honored her, she launched a crowdfunding campaign to expand Art for All internationally. The goal was ambitious: raise enough funds to bring art supplies, workshops, and therapy programs to underserved communities worldwide. She partnered with local organizations in countries where access to resources was limited, ensuring that the initiative adapted to cultural needs while staying true to its core mission. To kickstart the campaign, she organized a live-streamed art auction featuring pieces donated by renowned artists, including Clint Eastwood, who sent a stunning landscape he'd painted himself. The event drew thousands of viewers, with bids skyrocketing within minutes. By the end of the night, they had raised more than double their initial target. The success of the auction proved that people believed in her vision and were willing to invest in making it a reality. Over the next year, Art for All expanded rapidly. Workshops popped up in refugee camps, rural villages, and urban neighborhoods. Kits filled with paints, brushes, and instructions were distributed to schools lacking art programs. Online tutorials allowed participants to learn techniques from anywhere in the world. Each project carried the same message: creativity knows no bounds, and everyone deserves the chance to express themselves. One particularly impactful program took place in a remote village devastated by natural disasters. Families there had lost everything: their homes, livelihoods, and sense of stability. When volunteers arrived with art supplies, skepticism lingered in the air. Why focus on painting when basic necessities were still scarce? But as children began creating pictures of brighter futures and adults painted memories of happier times, something shifted. Art became a tool for healing, helping them process grief and imagine possibilities beyond their current struggles. A young girl from the village later sent her a letter, accompanied by a drawing of a flower blooming in cracked soil. "This is me," the note read. "I thought I was broken, but your art taught me I can grow again." Holding the paper in her hands, she felt a lump rise in her throat. This was why she kept pushing forward. Moments like these, reminders that even the smallest actions could plant seeds of hope. Despite the successes, setbacks were inevitable. There were days when fatigue weighed heavily on her shoulders, forcing her to cancel plans or postpone projects. Medical appointments sometimes clashed with deadlines, leaving her frustrated and guilty for not doing more. Critics occasionally questioned whether her efforts were sustainable, pointing out logistical challenges and funding gaps. Through it all, she leaned on her support system, her family, mentors, and the countless people who had joined her cause. Her relationship with Clint Eastwood remained a constant source of encouragement. Though their interactions were rare, each message he sent carried weight. In one letter he wrote, "Life's like a river. It twists and turns, but it keeps moving forward. You're doing good work, kid. Don't let the rocks stop you." Those words became a mantra, guiding her through moments of doubt. As her 15th birthday approached, she reflected on how much had changed since her diagnosis 5 years earlier. Back then, survival felt like the only goal. Now, she saw her illness not as a curse but as a catalyst, a force that pushed her to discover her purpose. She celebrated the milestones surrounded by loved ones, including some she'd met through her journey. Kids she'd taught to paint, veterans she'd worked with, and volunteers who had become friends gathered to honor her resilience. At the party, someone handed her a canvas covered in colorful fingerprints, each one belonging to someone whose life she'd touched. Beneath the fingerprints was a single sentence written in bold letters. "Together, we create hope." Tears streamed down her face as she hugged everyone in sight. This wasn't just her achievement, it was theirs. Looking ahead, she dreamed bigger than ever before. She envisioned museums dedicating spaces to showcase art created by patients, schools integrating creative therapies into curriculums, and governments recognizing the importance of accessible art programs. While the road ahead was long, she knew she wouldn't walk it alone. Every brushstroke, every workshop, and every connection brought her closer to a world where art wasn't seen as a luxury, but as a lifeline. And so, with determination burning in her heart, she picked up her paintbrush once again. For her, the canvas was infinite, and the possibilities endless. Because in a life shaped by challenges, she had discovered something extraordinary: the power to turn pain into purpose, and dreams into reality. Years passed, and the young artist's journey evolved in ways she could never have predicted. What began as a humble effort to sell paintings at a farmer's market had grown into a global movement that touched lives on nearly every continent. Her story wasn't just about her anymore. It belonged to everyone who found hope, strength, or inspiration through her work. Yet, despite the accolades, awards, and recognition, she remained grounded. For her, success wasn't measured by fame or fortune. It was measured by the smiles she brought to faces, the connections she forged, and the lives she helped transform. By the time she turned 18, Art for All had become a household name. Schools incorporated its programs into their curriculums, hospitals adopted art therapy as part of patient care, and governments began funding initiatives inspired by her model. The ripple effect of her efforts stretched far beyond what anyone thought possible. In remote villages, children painted murals on crumbling walls, turning gray spaces into vibrant expressions of resilience. In bustling cities, elderly residents gathered in community centers to create collages of memories, finding joy in shared creativity. Everywhere she looked, people were using art not just as a form of self-expression, but as a way to heal, connect, and dream again. Her own art continued to evolve alongside her mission. She experimented with new mediums, sculpture, digital art, even performance pieces, always pushing boundaries and challenging herself to grow. One project, titled Threads of Humanity, involved weaving together thousands of fabric strips sent in by participants from around the world. Each strip carried a message, a drawing, or a symbol representing someone's personal story. When completed, the massive tapestry was displayed in galleries worldwide, serving as a powerful reminder of unity amid diversity. Despite her achievements, life wasn't without its struggles. Chemotherapy treatments became less frequent as her health improved, but the scars, both visible and invisible, remained. There were days when fatigue made it hard to get out of bed, and nights when fear crept in, whispering doubts about the future. On those difficult days, she turned to her family, mentors, and the countless supporters who had become like extended family. Their love and encouragement reminded her that she didn't have to face challenges alone. One particularly tough period came during her final year of high school. Balancing academics, medical appointments, and her advocacy work felt overwhelming. Teachers offered extensions on assignments, friends pitched in to help with projects, and her parents stayed up late helping her study. Still, there were moments when she wondered if she'd bitten off more than she could chew. But then she remembered something Clint Eastwood once told her. Life doesn't give you breaks, you make them. Those words pushed her to keep going one step at a time. When graduation day finally arrived, she stood on stage, diploma in hand, overwhelmed with emotion. The crowd erupted into applause, not just for her academic accomplishments, but for everything she'd overcome to get there. As she scanned the sea of faces, she spotted familiar ones, her parents beaming with pride, her siblings cheering loudly, volunteers from Art for All, and even Clint Eastwood, who had flown in to surprise her. His presence brought tears to her eyes, a silent reminder of how far she'd come since that fateful day at the farmer's market. After the ceremony, he pulled her aside for a quiet moment. "You've done incredible things, kid," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "But remember, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." She nodded, knowing he was right. While high school marked a milestone, her journey was far from over. She had plans to attend art school, travel to underserved communities, and continue expanding Art for All. Each goal was ambitious, but she'd learned to embrace uncertainty, trusting that every challenge carried an opportunity within. As she prepared for college, she reflected on the lessons she'd learned along the way. One of the most important was the power of vulnerability. Sharing her story, the highs and lows, the triumphs and fears, had allowed others to see themselves in her. It reminded her that no one is truly alone in their struggles. Another lesson was the importance of gratitude. Every brushstroke, every kind word from a stranger, every donation, no matter how small, had contributed to her success. Acknowledging these gifts kept her grounded and fueled her desire to give back. She also realized that leadership wasn't about doing everything herself. It was about empowering others to join the cause. Volunteers, donors, teachers, and artists had all played vital roles in bringing Art for All to life. Without them, her vision would have remained just that, a dream. This understanding shaped her approach moving forward. Instead of trying to control every detail, she focused on creating spaces where people could contribute their unique talents and perspectives. Her first major project after graduating aimed to bridge generational gaps through art. Partnering with senior living facilities and youth organizations, she launched a program called Generations United. Participants worked together to create collaborative pieces, blending traditional techniques with modern styles. The results were breathtaking. Quilts stitched with both needlework and graffiti-inspired designs, sculptures combining clay and recycled materials, and murals that told stories spanning decades. Watching elders share wisdom while young people introduced fresh ideas created a sense of mutual respect and understanding. By her early 20s, she had achieved milestones many only dreamed of. Galleries competed to host her exhibitions, universities invited her to lecture, and nonprofits sought her guidance on building sustainable programs. Yet, she never lost sight of why she started. Whether addressing world leaders at conferences or teaching painting to a group of kids in a rural village, she approached every interaction with humility and authenticity. Her message remained consistent. Art has the power to heal, unite, and inspire, and everyone deserves access to it. One evening, as she sat sketching ideas for her next project, she received an email that brought tears to her eyes. It was from a young girl battling cancer, inspired by her story. Attached to the email was a photo of a painting the girl had created, a vibrant sunset over a calm ocean. "Your journey gave me hope," the note read. "I used to think I couldn't do anything because I'm sick, but now I know I can still dream big. Thank you." Moments like these reminded her why she kept fighting, not just for herself, but for everyone who needed a reason to believe. Her illness had taught her that life is fragile, unpredictable, and precious. And while she couldn't control everything, she could choose how she responded, with courage, creativity, and compassion. Years later, as she stood before a crowd at a global summit on arts and education, she reflected on her journey. From a shy girl selling paintings to fund her chemotherapy, to a celebrated advocate changing lives worldwide, she had come a long way. But the core of who she was hadn't changed. She was still the same person who believed in the transformative power of art, who saw beauty in brokenness, and who refused to let adversity define her. Her closing remarks that day echoed the sentiment that had guided her since the beginning. We are all works in progress, constantly evolving, learning, and growing. Art reminds us that even in our imperfections, we are capable of creating something extraordinary. So pick up your brush, your pen, your voice, or whatever tool speaks to you, and start painting your masterpiece. Because the world needs your light. And with that, she stepped off the stage, ready to continue writing the next chapter of her story, one brushstroke at a time.